Hi, good morning, and welcome to this presentation on flipped classrooms. My name is Hannah Danaraj. I'm a chemistry teacher at Baradine College. The agenda for this presentation is we'll look at what is a flipped classroom. We'll look at why should a teacher flip their classroom, and I'll also look at how to flip a classroom. Now, there are many ways that you can flip your classroom. I'll show you some examples from what I've done, what has worked for me, and also maybe some of the mistakes I made and things that I've learned from trialing this with some of my classes. So, the first question is, what is a flipped classroom? Before I look at the very theoretical definition of it, very simple definition is, as a teacher, we have a toolbox that is, full of our teaching strategies, the pedagogy. For example, you know exactly what sort of lesson or what teaching approach you would use on a Monday morning versus a Friday period 5 lesson. You know exactly what sort of teaching approach you would use in a term 1 lesson versus a term 4 lesson. So flipped learning is just another tool in your toolbox. So all you're doing is you're taking and making use of technology. And the idea is that the time that you would normally spend in class delivering a lecture can now be put on a video or a podcast linked to your school's website. Students can watch it at home, and then when they come into the classroom the next day, they can use the information from that lecture and apply it. So your classroom is now more of a space for application rather than a space where they copy notes and listen to a lecture. Okay. If you want a theoretical definition, we've got one for you. It says flipped learning is a pedagogical approach, though I don't really like that word much, in which direct instruction moves from the group learning space to the individual's learning space. And the resulting group space, which in other words is our classroom, is then transformed into a dynamic, interactive learning environment where the educator, which is you and me, we guide our students as they apply concepts and engage creatively in the subject matter. So that's a theoretical definition for what flipped learning is. So why did I get the name flipped learning is if you look at the traditional style of teaching, I stand in front of the classroom, I use the whiteboard, I deliver a lecture, 10 or 15 minutes after into my lecture, I pause, I give my students an opportunity to apply what they've been taught. Then I go back to some lecture, they do a bit of application. But the reality is that at the end of the day, I will be giving them homework. And the fact is that although I try to address the complex problems in class, there will be things in the homework that they will not be confident of doing. And so flipped learning is just taking that idea of traditional learning and flipping it and saying, do your homework in class, and the classwork can be watched as a video at home. So hence the name flipped learning. So we looked at what is flipped learning. Well, let's look at the next question, which why should you want to get into this? Is it just another fad? Is this just another passing thing that's happening in teaching? Well, there's statistics, of course, which I always like to start with. 200 teachers were interviewed, people who had actually flipped their classroom, 85% had seen improved grades. I really fall into this last category here. 23% said that they transformed their class from a lecture forum to an interactive environment. That's really what I want to do, and that's why I trialed flipped classrooms with one of my year levels. Another reason why you should want to flip your classroom, our guiding document is a New Zealand curriculum. So if you look at the reasons mentioned in the New Zealand curriculum, which I'm not going to read out because I know you are all familiar with them. I believe that flipped learning actually ticks all of those boxes as well. Finally, why I flipped my classroom. I wanted my classroom to be learner-centered. I wanted to encourage students to take responsibility for their learning and growth. I was so tired of them coming up for tutorials just before an exam, especially just before NCA. And so I thought maybe if we did this, it might give them some videos that they can actually go back to, watch at home, and actually encourage them to take more responsibilities for their learning. I was also tired of unfinished homework and offering homework detentions, which means that again I have to be available to supervise these homework detentions, and also so many lunchtime tutorials that I had to offer simply because they couldn't handle the level of challenge that the homework had. So rather than do homework at home, I said, why not flip this classroom and say, well, let's do the homework at school, or at least some of it. Well, the final question we want to look at is, how do you flip a classroom? So maybe you think, oh, maybe this is a good idea, maybe I'll trial it. So how do you go about it? As I said at the start, there's many ways that you can do this, and I'm going to share with you some of the ways I've flipped my classroom. And as we know, teaching is a very personal art. You can take my ideas and you can tweak it and make it your own, something that works best for your school and for your cohort. So a few steps that I followed. Step 1, choose 1 year level. So if you decide to go with flipped learning, don't roll it out across all your classrooms. Choose 1 year level. I chose a level 3 class. Choose one achievement standard. So you, of course, again, you can't do this for every achievement standard. Each one has their own complexities. I chose redox simply because the level 3 students had done some redox at level 2, so it was not altogether new topic for them, and so some sort of independent learning was expected of them anyway. Step 3, I prepared a schedule of lessons. This is something every teacher does. The only difference was that for every learning intention, I had a video and I had classwork that matched that video that I had just either found on the internet or I had prepared. So again, a word of caution, if you're thinking, oh my goodness, where am I going to find the time to make all these videos? Do not worry. The internet is just full, it's crawling with videos of teachers who have actually delivered content already for you. And I'll show you some websites where you can find them. So you do not have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to do this yourself. The fourth step was, if you decide to prepare your own videos and you don't like what you see on the internet, I've used very simple software like Jing or Office Mix. Some of you may have used others. I am not very tech savvy, so very simple, very basic for me, and it's worked. Once I prepare the video, upload it to your school's website, either in Moodle or Ultranet, and then something that I learned the second year of my trial was, I think it is best that your video and classwork is based on one textbook. So for example, I use the continuing chemistry textbook simply because they have the CD that has the online version of the book as well. And so the student is not being thrown into a mystery every day. They do have a continuity and they kind of know what to expect. And that's pretty much what you would do in a traditional classroom. So why change that model? And so I based it on one particular textbook. And I would say that would be a good model to use as well. The next one is upload a schedule of learning for students. So this is really, really important because otherwise they really don't know which video is matched with which classwork. So I've put up for day 1, watch the video that is titled Introduction to Redox. And then I tell them that that video will correspond to, let's say, page 23, ESA Study Guide, Activity 15A is what we will complete in class the next day, or continuing chemistry, whatever textbook you choose, or the SciPad. All right. So and the final step is you start every lesson with a quiz, or you ask students to bring up their own questions, something that they have from watching the video, but keep that first few minutes as a recap of what was said on the video. that'll actually give you an idea of how many students have watched the video and how many of them are actually prepared to go and apply the concept. Now, to make sure that your efforts are actually successful, I would suggest these three things. Again, some of them I learned only at the end of my first year of trial, and I wish I had done this before. But, well, I learned it, and I hope that you get a heads up on this. First one, talk to your students about why you want to deliver instruction via a flipped classroom. I think a lot of them are so used to the traditional method of teaching, especially when you're coming to level 2 and level 3, that you don't want them to think that the flipped classroom is some sort of a way to confuse them. But I think clearly explaining what's in this for them, and also showing them maybe sometimes the amount of effort that you go through, that it's not you trying to do less work, but it's actually something that they benefit more from as compared to a traditional model of teaching. So I think just talking to your students and just setting the scene is really important. The second one is make sure they have access to the internet. Again, they must, have logins to the school's website, and they must have regular time that they can set aside to use the material. So I think it's a good idea to talk to your parents during the first parent interview of the year. Find out what they do after school. And I learned so much from that I started making my videos shorter, sharper, and more very, very focused without because I came to know that these girls were my students would go home and then they would go off to some very intense sports training or dance or drama or something else they would do after school. And so keeping that in mind, you want this video to actually be watched, you want it to be humorous, you want it to be something they actually look forward to every day. And the last thing is something that we always do as a teacher is use your student achievement data to inform your teaching. So for example, for that level 3 class that I trialed, I looked at their level 2 NCA results. I looked at how many were achieved, and if I had a class which is really struggling, perhaps I would not use a flipped classroom method of teaching. So it really depends on who your student is, and you're the best judge of that. So I think it is a tool, as I said before, but matching it to the class that would best benefit from it, that only you can do. Finally, I'll finish with this is that two useful websites. One of them is called FLN, like flipped learning, .schoolwires.net. Now, this website is run by a teacher. It's you don't need a login, nothing. It's just very user friendly. And the one site that I found very useful is this one called Resources. So if you're not in a mood to record a video, or just don't have the time, you'll find a lot of videos there. And this is not the only website, tons of others, but I found this really nice. This gives me some idea of what is flipped learning, and it gave me some background as well on it. And because it was hosted by a teacher, I was able to connect to it. The other website I found really useful is sophia.org. Now, this is more, it's like a learning academy, so you can get a proper certification in flipped learning. And so it's a very academic view on what flipped learning is. So I hope that if you want to trial this next year, then give yourself 1 or 2 days in the summer break to go through these websites, do some homework, and then look at whether that's something that you would really want to do next year. So I'll actually close with this slide, and the reason I've included some of my work here is I want to show you that you don't have to be very tech savvy. This is one website, a tutorial that I loaded as a video to my Ultranet page, and it was just a normal PowerPoint, but because I had a stylus and I was able to write on the screen, I was able to help my girls through Hess's law. So using Jing and just a regular old PowerPoint, I prepared my video tutorial for that evening, which took me probably 5-6 minutes. That was it. This one here is another tutorial that I prepared. I used the online continuing chemistry book. So Those times when in my lecture I want the girls to actually copy something down, I get it straight off of the textbook. And so I have the textbook always as a place where I go back to. The last video here is, again, a level 2 problem from ESA study guide being worked out, step-by-step method, just using Jing, and very simple and straightforward. So I hope this encourages you. I hope you've learned something from this. Thank you very much for listening, and good luck to you for next year. Bye.